Everyone. So now we're moving on to day 4 of our African safari, and we change the feel of it a little bit today because we have left Bumi Hills in Zimbabwe, and now we're going down to a camp called Somalisa that is also in Zimbabwe. Now, the contrast between the two camps is big. So you saw the pictures in previous videos of Bumi Hills and just how resort-like it was. Well, Somalisa is more bush camp like. Okay, so you'll see in a moment kind of what that looks like. You'll also see, don't know how well you can see it, but down here, the Somalisa camp is part of the Hwange National Park. And just to give you an idea, I did look up how the size of Hwange compares to a couple of parks in the United States. And so, for instance, it is 1.5 times bigger than Yellowstone National Park, and it's 5 times bigger than Yosemite National Park. So it's a big game area. Um, so, uh, and I can't remember if I mentioned this, but when you're going to these places, they're in what's called a concession. And the concession is land within the park that they rent from the National Park Service in Africa, in these countries in Africa. And so they manage that part of the park and they have exclusive rights to that part of the park. And that becomes kind of important a little later because at one point we're trying to find lions. And our guide is talking to another guide from another camp, and he's like, "You picked the wrong camp. The lions are actually in our concession." So it became pretty clear as to, how these delineations kind of work in these national parks in Africa. All right, so let's get to why this is so different. First, we're greeted by zebra, nothing unusual. We saw zebra all the time. This is the road from the airstrip going to the Somalisa camp. As you can see, still it's a dirt road, quite sandy here instead of rocky at the previous camp. But then we get to the camp itself, and this is our accommodations. And this is a little closer look at it. Okay, so I described for you before that at Bumi Hills, it was more like an actual room, that had fairly solid walls, um, and all that. And you couldn't hear animal sounds all that much. It was just not something that you would hear. Now, this, on the other hand, this is a tent. This is not a room. And so it's got some structure to the walls and everything, but there's not much that's between you and nature, between you and the animals. In fact, our back porch was on that left-hand side there, and that area back there, animals would walk by all the time. Elephants, antelope, all kinds of different species of antelope. So, animals were around all the time. Um, and the big difference between Bumi Hills and going to Somalisa was we were told at Somalisa you could not walk around at night by yourself. You could walk during the daytime by yourself around the camp, but at night you needed a guide. And that was not the case at Bumi Hills, because the big animals usually were not in the camp at all. I don't know that if they ever were actually at Bumi Hills. But here we were told you could walk out your door. There's our door right there. You could walk out your door and an elephant could be standing there. And so in our rooms, we had walkie-talkies. We also had an air horn that we could use. If we felt threatened in any way, we could use that air horn and people would come running to help us. But the walkie-talkie was, if you open your door and you see an elephant standing there, you call a guide to come help you. Okay. And we had to do that. um, a couple of times. And in fact, when we first arrived at this camp, we go to the room to kind of check things out and everything, and we're coming out the door and coming back up the path, and I'll show you what we saw. There's our back porch on the on this tent. It's really kind of cool, actually. But I mean, seriously, that's a screen. That's not anything that's going to keep a lion out of your tent or an elephant out of your tent if they wanted to come in, or even a hyena for that matter. Um, and I'll show you later at the end, at night, they would pull down these canvas pieces up at the top there. So, I mean, seriously, there wasn't much between you and the outside, and you could hear things going on at night all the time. In fact, our first night there in Somalisa, you could hear lions roaring off in the distance. So we knew lions were around. Um, and it's a little disconcerting. At first, you're like, okay, fine, right? But you now have a greater sense of you're in the wilderness. Um, you are so close to these animals, uh, and they can be so close to you that it just adds a different feeling to the experience, much more so than just the game drive itself, which is why I wanted to do these videos, right? In fact, one night I kept hearing something, um, some animal sounds, and I couldn't quite make out what it was. I knew it wasn't lions. I knew it wasn't elephants. I'd heard enough of elephants by then to know an elephant sound or a hippo. Um, but I recorded it during the night and asked a staff member, and they said, "Oh, that's the hyenas and the jackals. They don't like each other, you know." So that's what I was hearing. Now, how far away from me it was, I don't know, but that's kind of just how close you are to nature there. So here we come out that first afternoon when we get there, and there are elephants all over the camp. In fact, as we're walking towards, this is the main camp to the right here. Back behind it is kind of the cook's area, the kitchen and everything. So this elephant is just right there. And so we're being waved at to wait for a guide. The guide comes and gets us, and we kind of walk around a way to get around to the main tent. But this was a common occurrence because these elephants really liked this tree right here. You see that big tree trunk, and they would place their heads up against that tree trunk, and they would shake it really hard, and these little crescent shaped seed pods would fall on the ground. They were everywhere, and these elephants loved to eat those. So this was their dining hall too, in a way. Uh, so very often we would see these elephants all over camp. Um, Another bird that we saw in Somalisa quite often was this hornbill. It's beautiful, beautiful bird. Um, and we saw them several times. They were there around a lot. Here's another. This is a really good photo of a couple of kudu, female kudus that were hanging out. I think this was a starling. Not totally sure, but I think that's what it was. Beautiful bird with orange eyes. Another picture of the hornbill. He had a nut of some kind in his beak that he was taking off somewhere with. And then, of course, elephants were all over. Kind of one of the prime reasons you go to Somalisa is for the elephants. They're everywhere. And you'll see pictures of this at Somalisa where in front of the main camp, they have a watering hole and they keep it full of water. They've actually got an aquifer down below that they've built plumbing to. So they actually keep that watering hole pretty full so that animals come around all the time. But these elephants were everywhere. And eventually on another day, you'll see a big parade of them, 20 to 30 elephants that were around the watering hole. But these elephants are pretty much everywhere. at Somalisa. Beautiful, beautiful animals. Just giving you some shots of elephants that I took. And then one day we ran across a water buffalo herd. They were kind of blocking the road. Um, and so we were looking at those. And you can see even in the really high, tall brown grass, they kind of blend in like rocks, like big boulders. Interesting animals. But we got alerted in our vehicle that there was a leopard sighting. Now, this was in the regular part of Hwange National Park. So if you're not in the concession, then all these other vehicles can be in the same area. So we heard that a leopard sighting had happened in Hwange, and all of these cars started racing towards where they were told they were going to find the leopard. And so we find this beautiful girl. Um, and for some reason they named her Barbecue. They said that it was because as a cub she showed up a lot at the camp around dinner time or whatever. So whatever, they called her Barbecue. Um, Beautiful animal. And so about 8 or 9 cars sort of descended upon her to take photos and check her out. And it was almost as if she kind of knew kind of what we wanted. So she jumped up on this tree and just kind of hung up there for quite some time with people just taking photos, click, 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 click. Um, and you can see she's just gorgeous. So I'll just cycle through several photos that I took of her. Tried to get different angles, different distances, just to get a good, decent picture of her up on that tree. I thought that was a good one, just for our perspective. And you can see the radio antenna of our vehicle in the foreground there. She's beautiful, really beautiful. She yawned at one point. And then we went back to the water buffalo. Okay. Um, so yeah, they were all over the road, probably a good 40 or 50 of them hanging out, eating. Majestic animals. And this here, a lot of times I took photos, a few photos of kind of the landscape of Africa. A lot of times it was somewhat different in the kind of trees that were around. Um, this area had a lot of acacia trees, so I do have some giraffe. Giraffes love acacia trees. So I do have some giraffe photos, not today in particular, um, but you can see the tall grasses and um, some taller trees, but a lot of them are smaller kind of trees. But it's a really beautiful landscape. Um, One day we ran across this puff adder. He was kind of slithering across the road. It was pretty quick. I only could get maybe one photo of him or her. Um, and this is towards the evening at Somalisa. Really beautiful, open kind of grassland area here, and one of the many watering holes around Somalisa. And we found a lioness group. They had just had dinner. We didn't see them catch it or eat the whole thing, but these girls were pretty full. Quite a few photos of them that I got. Now, this beauty right here, this lady, one of the famous lions of Somalisa, his name was Cecil. Um, I Now you may have heard reports of Cecil being shot and killed, um, and so he's no longer at Somalisa, but this apparently was one of his wives. so to speak. They actually pointed her out. And so anyway, a couple of pictures of her having dinner. And you can see these full bellies um, of the girls hanging out. And, they were pretty full and they were like, whatever, looking at us. A lot of them not even really paying attention to us at all. That one felt like a sentry. She was kind of on the outside of everybody, kind of looking around. Beautiful girl. And then here is the last photo, and this is that heavy canvas that they would roll down at night. So when we came in at night, this heavy canvas would be pulled down over that screen. But even that heavy canvas, even though it's heavy and it's fairly thick, maybe a millimeter, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. Even though it's fairly heavy and dense, um, if a lion wanted to get through that, they certainly could. And it's not like a door is closing. So any sounds you hear at night, you hear them as if they're close by, right? A lot of times I don't think these animals were anywhere close to us. Um, but there you go. It was just a very different experience. So hopefully this inspires you to kind of see the difference between these different camps and the different kinds of experiences that you can have. And so if you really want a high-end kind of luxury experience, Bumi Hills is great, you know, and it's not as scary sometimes. Now after a while we got used to it. We got used to being in a bush camp. And we actually learned to love it and we learned to really kind of relax into it. It was great. And it's actually, I think, probably our preferred experience in Africa now. But at first, it's a little disconcerting to be in a bush camp. Uh, Now, these are really nice. They have showers, inside and outside showers, and indoor plumbing and all of that. It's really nice accommodations, even in a tent. And the people are really gracious and very welcoming, because a lot of times these people are having to stay for long periods of time at camps. Like for instance, our guide at this camp, he lived in Victoria Falls, so he has to fly home, back and back to camp. And so I believe that a lot of people who worked at Somalisa would stay here for a couple of months, so they do really, really become like family to each other, and they treat guests like family, beyond that. So I hope it inspires you to go to Africa. It's really very cool. Uh, and we used African bush camps. And also, if you're looking for someone to help you actually book a trip, consider Africa Dynamics at africadynamics.com. All right. So thanks a lot. So the next video will also be about Somalisa and the amazing animals that we saw there and the experiences we had. And there are going to be a lot of really terrific elephant sightings just at the camp in the next couple of days. Okay. So thanks so much, and I'll talk to you soon.